Yeah, so what I want to do, because this weekend I was trying to make a list of all the things in the world that's worrisome, and I ran out of paper.
Yeah.
There's so many things. We really are in a moment in time here. This is the Hey Ed YouTube channel, and I am your host, moderator, and all-around nice guy, Edward Anderson. And helping me today is Rob Bruss from Australia. Hey, Rob, how you doing, buddy?
G'day, Ed. Good to see you, mate. Great to be here.
Okay, so just a quick disclaimer, neither Robert nor I are investment advisors. Don't construe anything that we say in this presentation as investment advice. We're just a couple of guys who happen to know a few things, and we like to visit. And for those of you who don't know Rob, you should by now. He is a world-class figure, and I don't say that lightly. He truly is. He's world-renowned. He's a motivational speaker and a business consultant. Helps small business owners all the time to grow their businesses. And he has been the #1 podcaster in Australia at least 5 different times. So he's a pretty big deal. He's also better known in Australia as Chris Hemsworth butt double. So.
I wish.
Okay, so today we're gonna get back to our roots here and talk about things that everyone should know about related to the economy, world events, and how it affects you, and more importantly, what you can actually do to not only thrive in this environment, but maybe even benefit from it. Because there are ways, in times of turmoil, people do find ways of becoming wealthy. But we are in a moment in time here, I believe, Rob, that's not going to be a good moment in time, and it's already started. These are things that you and I have been talking about for quite a while, and so you and I aren't surprised by most of this stuff because we've been talking about it, and most of our subscribers are not surprised about it, either. So this weekend, when I was making my list of things that are going on in the world that are worrisome, and I ran out of paper, I thought, well, we got to do a conversation with Rob, man, because this is important stuff. So I'm going to dive in with a few topics. We'll take them one by one, because I couldn't decide which one is the scariest, which one is the most important. So I'm going to pick one at random here. And that is, right now, there is a worldwide famine that's underway. It's not coming, it's here.
Yeah, and I would start off by saying that 100% of it is deliberate. Yeah, this is a deliberate plan, and I might sound like a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist, but everything that I've said that seems like that has come to pass in the last 12 to 18 months. And you've just got to listen to your own intuition. And I always like to ask people this question, and I want to ask your audience this question because I think it's a bit funny to say. I'll ask you as well, Ed. So I'll ask you on behalf of the audience. Do you think that politicians lie?
Yes, they lie, but they got an agenda. You and I talked to that before, and I think I told you before. I think I told you before that they're either stupid or they're lying to us, or they have an agenda. And I kind of prefer that they're stupid, because then there's an off chance they might learn something along the way.
Yeah, but that's because you believe in the goodness of humanity, right? And you believe that if somebody seems a bit stupid, then there's a chance that they're actually trying to do the right thing. They just made a mistake.
Yeah, but these guys are liars, and they have agendas.
So I always like to kind of come back to that point to say that, do you think politicians are liars? And inevitably, most people will say yes. Most people will qualify that yes with a but. But I also think that they do it because of an agenda. And if you look at what's happened to energy here in Australia and you think that that is not deliberate, I think you're mistaken. We are the world's coal mine. We are the world's iron ore mine. We're the only thing Australia produces that's worth exporting is minerals, is iron ore, coal, and gas. And we have an absolute oversupply and surplus of this stuff, uranium as well, by the way. But we don't seem to sell that stuff to ourselves. We seem to be too worried about exporting that overseas, and we're too worried about turning off coal-fired plants to cause all sorts of problems. And when you look at it in its totality, sure, we want to move towards a 2030 greener agenda, and we want to get rid of fossil fuels and all those sorts of things. And I don't doubt that any of those things are necessarily a bad thing, whether you believe in environment, the environmental movement or not. I don't think it's a bad thing to wean ourselves off fossil fuels. But what I do think that they're trying to do is increase in energy prices, which increases the cost of living, which stops you spending more money, which fixes the inflation problem. So, and that actually stops all of the chaos in our economy. Now, is that deliberately happening here in our economies? Well, why is there suddenly an energy crisis? Well, where did that come from? We've had energy is expensive here in Australia for sure, but it's expensive in any part of the world, wherever you are, because it's relative to how much money you have. And, you know, if I'm earning $30,000 a week, do I care about my energy bill that's like $1,000 a quarter? No, I don't care about that. But if I'm only earning like $800 a week, do I care about my energy bill at that price point? Yes. And when you look at the average wages that somebody is getting here in Australia, it's at the lower end of that scale. So energy is starting to bite into what's going on. And when energy bites, everything else bites as well. Fuel prices bite, the cost of living goes up. You know, I drove this morning, instead of going for my morning workout, there's been some really spectacular sunrises here. And I drove this morning for 5 minutes to go and fly my drone this morning. And they were talking about, for 5 minutes on the radio, cost of living at 6 o'clock in the morning when I was going out to do that. And I just thought, look at that, you know, that's deliberate mainstream media talking about these things, promoting the agenda of these politicians. They've got an agenda and an axe to grind. And this is the way that I believe that they're doing it here in Australia. And you guys are seeing that in the US. I think it's a bit more amplified in the States because you just got a bigger population, right? And I think there's a bit more of a disparity in your demographics as well, the difference between, you know, the poverty line, middle class, and people that are doing pretty well. Here in Australia, everybody is middle class. We all do pretty well. The number of people below the poverty line is not the same per capita as what you guys would be facing in the States. So I think that that's why it's amplified more in the US and certainly in other countries in the world as well. I don't think, to your point about food supplies and famine, I don't think that that's ever going to be a problem here in Australia. We produce something like 15 times the amount of food here in Australia that we need for ourselves. So, you know, worst case scenario, we could just simply stop exporting the food that goes out the door. Right at the start of, I remember right at the start of the pandemic, the Chinese government got a bit cranky with Australia, and there was like a couple of cargo ships full of lobsters and wine and all that sort of stuff that just went awry. They said they didn't want it anymore because they were going to put these tariffs on it and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, yeah, whatever, man, we'll just go back fishing and get some more ourselves. So, you know, if we don't export our products, they can be easily sold here in Australia. We're never going to suffer from a food crisis here in Australia, but the cost of living will bite hard, which will cause you to choose what it is that you're actually buying. We see that happen periodically here in Australia. And I don't know if where you live in Minnesota, Ed, you see that, but often we have floods and fires here. You know, Australia is the land of floods and fires. You guys have that as well. You know, you have these crazy wildfires in California and whatnot. We seem to have that a bit more frequently. And what you see on the other side of those weather events is that suddenly, I can remember there was a cyclone, and there was a cyclone in North Queensland, and suddenly bananas were like $19 a kilo. But before, bananas were like $3 a kilo or something like that. And what it's got to do with is the supply and demand issue. There's still a demand for it. The supermarkets want to buy all these things, but there's not enough supply. So that is amplified by a weather event. And we've seen that recently with floods. Someone had put a picture on their Facebook the other day. I was scrolling through, and the text said, I guess we're not having salad for dinner tonight. I was like, what? And I looked at a picture, and there's a picture of a lettuce, and I was like, what? And I looked closely, and it was like $11.95 each for a lettuce. And that's got nothing to do with inflation or petrol prices or anything bad in the economy. It's got to do with all the floods that we've had recently, and all of those crops have just been destroyed. And if you want a lettuce, man, it's going to cost you $11. It's like, no, I'm good, right? I don't need to eat that rabbit food anyway. Like, I'll have a steak instead. The steak is cheaper than the lettuce. Who would have ever thought? But yeah, interesting times for sure.
Yeah, well, in theory, America should be independent. We shouldn't be reliant on anyone else for food or energy or anything else.
Energy.
Yeah. Now, a year and a half ago, before our current administration, we were energy independent for the first time in about 100 years. Okay, we were energy independent. We were a net exporter of oil. But then with one stroke of a pen on the first day of this administration, all that was destroyed. So now we have our president going hat in hand to our enemies, asking them to pump oil. Now, I know that we get about 20% of our apple juice and orange juice from China. Now, we've got Florida, we've got, California, who produce all the orange juice and apple juice we could ever drink, okay? But why did they do that? Because, when apple juice comes in from another country, we can tax it. Okay, when you tax your local people tend to, get angry about it. But if you tax it coming in, that's a different story. So there is there's gamesmanship going on there. If the politicians were really looking out for their people, there are easy fixes to do. It's not that complicated, a lot of these things. But circling back to the agenda, look, I think that the progressive part of our societies, they're not unhappy with the current inflation going on, particularly related to energy. They're cheering it on. They're perfectly happy. They would love to see $10 a gallon gas. Why? Because they think that's going to promote their evil agenda. They think, well, finally, people are going to want to buy that electric car. This will make them do it. And it's not going to hurt them. So there are agendas in play here. But let's move on a little bit. Okay, so a little bit of a segue, kind of the same, a little bit of overlap here. But we get virtually all of our pharmaceuticals from China. All of our pharmaceuticals are made in China. Whether it's oxycontin, any kind of medicine you want, it's been shipped, it's been outsourced to China. So I've been stocking up on Tylenol like crazy the past few months. But that's why I think medical costs are going to get out of control here, because China could easily either for nefarious purposes say, we're not going to send you as much, or with blockchain issues, not blockchain, what am I calling, supply chain issues. I mean, and that leads us to, this is kind of an awkward subject, okay, awkward transition. I want to talk about Taiwan, because I thought a lot about our last conversation when you predicted that China is going to take over Taiwan in some form or other pretty soon. And I'm starting to think it too. And the way things are looking, I'm thinking China might be in the crosshairs, whether it's an overt military act or just they find some way of making moves on Taiwan. So what are your thoughts on that? And what do you think could be the ramifications, particularly in your area?
Yeah, it's definitely right in our neighborhood. I'm going to put that aside for 1 second and be a bit of a politician and talk about the talking point that I think is a bit more important than that, actually. And I think these things are really serious problems. I think you're more likely to see a conflict between Israel and Iran before Taiwan and China. I think they're going to go after that nuclear facility. I think they're going to try and shut them down, because they're literally 2 minutes to midnight from getting a bomb and continuously saying that Israel is a one-bomb country. And it literally is. It's a very small place, right? One nuke fired at them, and the Iranians have got the missile technology. The Iranians have done really well in drone and missile and ballistic missile technology over the last 20 to 30 years, that all of these sanctions have been imposed upon them since the late 1970s, and they are masters of that. So I wouldn't underestimate that actually happening sooner rather than later. And if you know anything about what's going on in that part of the world as well, Turkey are ponying up to go back into Syria because they had enough of the Kurds, right? So, and they're ponying up to go and start another conflict over there. And these guys over in this part of the world, that we seem to be in a state of perpetual war. We've had a bit of quiet for a little while, but that's about to kick off again at a scale that we've never, ever seen before. And when you look at the Persians to the north, and we have the Abraham Accords with the Emiratis, the Bahrainians, the Saudis, and the Israelis all come together to say, well, if those guys get a nuclear weapon, we need to stand against them. But the Israelis are surrounded. They're surrounded by Lebanon on one side. They're surrounded by Yemen on the other side. And they're a short ballistic missile flight from wherever they're launching in the Persian Gulf. So I think that the chances of a conflict there are much higher. And then you see energy prices go even more because they control the Straits of Hormuz. And I've been there. I've personally been there myself in the Straits of Hormuz, which is how you get into the Arabian Gulf. And it's because it's inside of Iranian territorial waters. And when you transit through there, you have to request permission to transit through there. And might remember, there was the tanker wars of the early 1990s, pre the first Gulf War, where they were controlling what was coming in and out, what was going on there. In the Iran-Iraq war in the 1980s as well, they were controlling the Straits of Hormuz. We end up in a hot conflict with those guys, and by I mean by proxy the Israelis, because the Israelis are supplied by the West. They have their own infrastructure and their own technology, but nobody goes to war by themselves anymore, and none of these things happen in a vacuum. They happen as a coalition. And I think if a coalition goes up against Iran, and on our side, we've got the Abraham Accord going there to stop that, the Saudis, Emiratis, the Bahrainians, and all that sort of stuff, I think that that's going to be a conflict at the scale we've never seen before. And the first thing that they're going to do is block the Straits of Hormuz. No more oil in and out, no more cargo in and out, no more resup that way. The only way you can resup yourself is on the Red Sea side. And then it's carte blanche for the Chinese to go, righto, there's no chance that the Americans, there's no chance that NATO and the Western alliance that we put together, whoever that Western alliance is, whether that's the Quad or somebody else, is going to be able to stop us. But I think that the categorical mistake the Chinese are making, and part of the reason that they actually are just waiting now, and it hasn't happened soon, it comes to this time of the year, in actual fact, as the weather calms down in that part of the world in the South China Sea, that's the time for them to transit the strait and to do amphibious landings. But I don't think that it would ever be an amphibious landing. I think any pundit out there saying that it's going to be an amphib landing is completely wrong. It will be an airborne helicopter assault. That's the only way they'll be able to get in there. But the Russians tried an airborne helicopter assault into Kyiv, and they got their asses handed to them. So I think the same thing will happen to the Chinese, because the Taiwanese are far more equipped and they have more training than what the Ukrainians had. So the Ukrainians kind of had all of the old Soviet gear, and they'd been training since 2014, but there's not that many of them. And when the Ruskies went in there and tried to take Kiev and take the airfield with their paratroopers on the first day of the war, they got caned. There's a bunch of planes that were shot down. There was like 5 battalions of Russian troops that were kind of wiped off the map, and they're their frontline troops, right? And I think if the Chinese do the same thing, not combat proven, no combat, they don't do dissimilar training, so they don't go up against any other military. So the only tactics they know are their own tactics. You can study all you want, but until you get into a conflict or you get on an exercise with somebody else, you don't know how you're going to react or how you're going to behave. And likewise, the same goes for the Taiwanese, but I think they've got more to lose than what the Chinese do. So they'll fight a little bit harder. And it comes down to the old Sun Tzu saying, right, you want to put your troops on the death ground. And Sun Tzu would say that your troops will fight hardest when they're on their death ground. That's why the Ukrainians are winning, because they've got no choice. If we don't fight here, we are going to die here. And the Taiwanese are exactly the same. And you're talking about an island that's like tiny. It's a speck, really, in the scheme of things. So when you look at the physical way that they could attack, the Chinese could rain down missiles on the Taiwanese for days. They can cause all sorts of problems for their air force and gain air superiority quickly because of the weight of numbers. But do you think that Japan, India, Australia, and the US are going to just kind of stand over the horizon and watch? There's no chance. There's absolutely no chance that that's going to happen. And pretty quickly, we'll be in that conflict. Pretty quickly, that will be the tide will turn. The Taiwanese will be able to hold out for a week or so until we all turn up. And once we turn up, then the airborne helicopter assault will be underway. There'll be Chinese troops on their turf. But I just don't see how they could actually do it. I don't see how they could physically take it, by sheer weight of numbers. I had a mate of mine, one of my best mates, he lives in Taiwan, and he's an Aussie like me, and his wife is Taiwanese. And when you ask them about that, there's absolutely no chance that China would ever invade there, because every single Taiwanese person is like his wife, Nini. And she's like, no, no, no. Everything is just like a flat out no. I think here in Australia, if the Chinese were down the end of the street here about to come ashore at Cronulla Beach, which the Japanese threatened to do in World War II, the greenie lefties here would be at the end of the street saying, let them come, whatever. I just think society here in Australia is very different to a place like Taiwan or a place like the Ukraine. I could be completely wrong. And, Aussies might step up like in the Anzac spirit or something like that. I don't know. But from what I see with society here in Australia now, it's a bit kind of softer. I wouldn't say it's weaker, but it's kind of very softer and a bit worried about what everyone feels and thinks. But when someone's pointing a gun at you and somebody's threatening to take you home and invading your country, I don't think that would change their opinion very much, because they just kind of cower in the corner like they can do nothing about it. I think the Taiwanese are very different. They're prepared for it. They're ready for it. It's a matter of time before it happens. Will they succeed? Who knows?
You Aussies would have to be fighting back with your fishing gear. They took away all your guns. So I don't know what.
Well, all jokes aside, we talk about this Quad and this AUKUS and all of these deals, and we have this thing called the ANZUS Treaty here in Australia, which means if it's kind of like NATO, right? If we get attacked, the Americans will come and rescue us, and we sit under that umbrella. The Kiwis sit under that umbrella. The Canadians sit under that umbrella as well. It's a version of an alliance that we actually have. But the problem with Australia here is we've got 8 or 9 submarines or something like that. We've got 4 air warfare destroyers. We don't have any more frigates anymore. We've got a couple of landing craft. The reality is, if I was a Chinese general, I'd just rain down ballistic missiles into all of those places from space. There's nothing we can do. We don't have any air defenses here. There's no missile batteries facing north in across the Timor Straits or something like that. It's absolutely ridiculous. The Chinese could rain down ballistic missiles fired from mainland China, take out Pine Gap, take out every single military installation that we have, and you kind of decapitate everything, all the assets that we have. They could rain down ballistic missiles on our F-35 fleet that's sitting out in the freaking open. They don't have hardened shelters. The reason that the Americans don't have their Air Force based here in Australia and use that as a forward operating base or a land-based aircraft carrier is because we don't have hardened shelters. We have B-2s and B-1s and B-52s coming all the time to Tyndall, but there's nowhere to park them. They park them out in the ramp. And if the Chinese are raining down missiles on us, there's no chance that those aircraft will survive. If you look at a place like Anderson Air Force Base in Guam, they're all hardened shelters. Rain down as many missiles as you want. You're going to get a couple of us for sure, but there's going to be a bunch of us that are going to survive and we're going to come back and give you as good as you're going to get as good as you give, sort of thing. So it's an interesting time in history. Do I think China will invade Taiwan? Yes, I do. But it might not happen in the way that you would think kinetically. I also think what you were saying there, Ed, about all of the world's pharmaceuticals coming from China, there's so many other things that come from China as well, and so many great things that come from there as well. And it could be more of an economic war that we face.
That's where I was going to.
Which is worse in some ways.
Yep. That's exactly where I was going. Even if there is not a shooting war, there's I think economic war is already underway in many parts of the world. And China, they've got a lot of ammunition in that department that they can use to make our lives miserable if they wanted to. The thing is, the Chinese, and we could do the same to them, except that we don't have the same resolve that they do. And there you pretty much have 1 or 2 guys making all the decisions. Here we got to run everything through committees before we make decisions. So so that's where I was going. Well, let's shift gears a little bit here on that. Kind of a pretty sharp left turn here. All right, so the financial markets have been in turmoil lately. You and I aren't surprised, because I've been doing YouTube videos on that for a month, talking about this exact thing happening, and I didn't miss my words. I said, when that line is taken out on the chart, this is what's going to happen. I'm not one of those Wall Street guys who hedged all of my predictions. And nope, if that's taken out, that's what's going to happen. And sure enough, it's playing out. And I didn't do anything fancy. And we all know that the crypto markets always accentuate whatever the regular markets are doing. And the regular market's been taking it on the chin, and so the crypto markets have been taken in behind the shed and had a bullet put it through his head almost. Just over the last weekend, the crypto market lost over $200 billion in one weekend. And that's a small, now that's not very much. It's not a big number for the stock market or the bond market, but for the crypto market, I mean, it's lost more than half of its value in about 4 months. Boom.
Yeah, well, it's up around 2 trillion there at the start of the year, wasn't it? It was hugely pumped up, and now we've lost all of that. That's a massive decline. You know, it's all relative, isn't it? You know, you're taking that percentage off the percentage that is, you know, we've had a 10 to 20% decline in the entire market. Imagine if that happened in the stock market or the bond market or the futures market, for heaven's sake. That's like enormous. Like the scale of those numbers are almost too hard to comprehend.
Well, yeah, and as I look at the charts, you know, I'm a technician, I look at the charts. I see a lot more downside personally in this market. And I do expect some kind of a very impressive, violent pushback rally here fairly soon, not because of any new developments. That's just the way the markets work. It's just
otherwise known as a dead cat bounce.
Yeah, there you go. You throw anything on the ground hard enough and it'll bounce, right? But the question is, will people take advantage of that to trade it and make a quick money, or lighten up on the positions that they're in? No, probably not. People will view that as a sigh of relief. Oh, thank God, the worst is over. Now I can relax. And then what happens? They get slapped in the face 2 weeks later. This is a trader's market, in my opinion. This is a market that people can make a lot of money on if you're a talented, disciplined, educated trader. Investors, I think, are in for a real tough, frustrating year. And my biggest concern are for people who are on fixed incomes or they're living on pensions, because a lot of pensions are going to be taking a real beating here this year in the markets, because they're invested in the markets, right? So they're going to take a big hit. And so people who are living on their pensions, they might have to tighten their belts quite a bit more in the near future, because they might be in for a rude awakening when they look at the next statement. So, you know, you and I try to find ideas for people to help them weather those kind of situations, get prepared for them. But it's all about knowing. The first thing I think people have to do is open their eyes and pay a little bit of attention. That's the first thing you have to do. You know, watch, you know, channels like yours or mine or other people that you trust, and because you're not going to get the real information in mainstream media. You're just not. All the things that you and I have been talking about so far in this conversation, we've already talked about in our previous conversations, and we were right all along. And we weren't saying anything really outrageous. We were looking at what was in front of us. I think this is what's going to happen, because we have a little bit of experience and we know a few things and we have a little bit of common sense. But you're not going to get that. So people have to start paying attention to what's really going on. And I've heard people say lately, now, as you know, I famously have like 1.5 years worth of toilet paper in my closet. And I've got a bunch of toothpaste and shaving cream and razor blades. And I've been getting laughed at. I'll tell you what, all that stuff that I've been sucking, I'm not going to lose money on them. Okay. They're not going to get cheaper as they go on. And I'm still going to be doing some prepping in that regard. Okay, so that's on the baseline level, right? But okay, so you have some supplies in your house and you can weather things that way. But what do you do financially? And this is what I'm kind of leading to kind of slowly, is this idea of fiat currencies. And this is one of our favorite points of, not conspiracy theory, we just know things that most people don't know about. Fiat currencies have a 100% record. They have a 100% failure rate. They have a perfect record. Every fiat currency in history has failed. Now, the US dollar has lasted a lot longer than most of them have, and they are still the world reserve currency, just barely, okay? But that's under attack too. But in the last 2 years alone, 40% of all US dollars in existence were printed in the past 2 years, 40%. So the Federal Reserve is just now surprised that inflation is kicking in. And by the way, when they're printing all of this money, none of that showed up in my bank account. I don't know, did any of that money printing show up in your bank account, Rob?
No, a little bit actually. The Australian government gave me a little bit of what they printed. It was like that. I think that inflation problem is actually a bit of a feign, if you could say that. It's a bit of a distraction. Look over here at inflation, and then something else is going on over there. And the reason I say that is because I think the Fed doesn't care so much about inflation. They care more about demand for the US dollar. And the thing that will make the whole fiat system come undone and collapse, I don't know if it will come undone or collapse. I was reading a report just 2 days ago that Venezuela and Iran had done a deal together. And you go, oh, there's two bad actors of the same side of the coin, right? So really, they're part of what would be considered the axis of evil. And, I don't say that lightly, because those governments are authoritarian and evil dictatorships. And Venezuela, particularly, being one of the richest nations on earth for oil wealth, but completely destroys their economy, and their people suffer like the worst suffering on planet Earth. And it's the ultimate irony of the 21st century, is that a socialist government is in charge of one of the biggest supplies of oil on planet Earth, with all of that wealth at their fingertips, yet they hoard it for themselves and crush the people that are on the receiving end of it. And if suddenly Venezuela and Iran get into bed together and trading oil in dinars and whatever currency the Venezuelans have, and there's no more demand for US dollars, and then people are buying oil and gas off Russia because they have to buy oil and gas off Russia in rubles because the sanctions have bitten so hard, suddenly the requirement for the USD is starting to gently go away. So the problem that we have with inflation is actually a distraction from that actually going on over there. And if the demand for the US dollars goes away, all of those US dollars will come home there to you guys in the States. They'll come home to you, everyone will try and buy everything, and then they'll suddenly be worth nothing, because inflation will really bite hard when that happens.
You're right. I don't think the Federal Reserve cares about inflation either. When they do finally say, yeah, we're worried about inflation, that's just a bromide to keep the people with the pitchforks away from the door. They don't really care.
The demand for US dollars is a more deadly thing for the US economy than inflation. So that's where their focus is. And inflation is, yeah, it's a problem. They've got to deal with it, but it's not as much as a problem as Venezuela, Iran, and Russia dealing in their own currencies and not dealing in US dollars anymore.
Well, and another little underknown unfun fact is that every single central bank in the world had been hoarding gold like crazy the past several years. They've been buying gold, so they print these dollars out of thin air. They just tap a few keystrokes on the keyboard, and they magically they got money. They take that fake money and they go out and they buy gold, but they don't want you to buy it. Okay, and it's funny how the price of gold hasn't really taken off yet. Well, I wonder how that could be. Well, we can talk about the LME and the CME being corrupt organizations, and how they are rigged markets. But point being that the central banks, they don't want you to buy gold, but they're buying it hand over fist, and they're buying it with fake money. Go out and
they banned gold in the 1930s there in the States, right? So there was a point where the government came out and said you're not allowed to own gold anymore. You're going to hand it all back. And I think it was like set at $20 or something like that, an ounce, something like that. I can't remember exactly. It's in a book I read. The book is called Why Gold, Why Now? It just goes through the history of it and how they kind of, it's a version of disarming you. Yeah, it's a version of, and that's why governments these days don't like cash so much, because cash is completely anonymous. That's right. If I've got $50,000 sitting under my mattress there, you can't tax that. You can't see that. There's nothing you can do. You can't take it off me. You can't do anything like that. But think about how much cash you've got on hand, and when was the last time you spent money in cash out of your wallet? Well, for me, I literally have no cash in my wallet right now. I think there's a few coins in my wallet. That's it. Because every time I go out, I pay with my phone. I don't even take my wallet anymore. It's like just how society has become, and I noticed the other day, just up in my local strip of shops, one of the banks is gone, and two of the ATMs that were at the front of the bank, they're gone as well. So, no requirement for that cash point anymore. No one comes in here anymore. Let's get rid of it. It's just an expense that we don't need anymore. People are doing all of their banking online, paying with their cards electronically. like that as well. That's still the fiat system.
Real estate, I think, is going to be for a real rough ride. I think that 2008, 2009 is going to look like a cakewalk by the time this is all over. Mostly because the real cause of the 2008, 2009 financial crisis was the exposure by the banks to derivatives, and which was largely a bet on interest rates, right? And the exposure the banks have, that the world financial system has now to those same derivatives, is greatly more than it was back then. 1.2 quadrillion dollars. I don't even know how many zeros that is in derivatives. The top 5 banks in New York have just between them $270 trillion of exposure to derivatives. To put that in perspective, the entire GDP of America is only $20 trillion. Okay.
Amazing.
So one bad day in the derivatives market, and we're going to wake up one day to see a major bank gone. I don't think it's not going to be a slow moving car crash. We're going to wake up one day, boom, Goldman Sachs is insolvent, or you name it. And then as soon as that first bank announces their troubles, all the banks are going to follow. And the day that first big event happens, if you drove straight to your bank to get your money out, you won't be able to.
Scary stuff, eh?
It is. And that, because you're too young to remember 2008, 2009. But let me tell you, back then we were going for days on end, wondering whether we're going to wake up the next morning and find out there was no more financial system. That's where we were at. Okay. And that could happen again. And people have, and now we have a whole generation out there who don't know what high interest rates are.
Yep.
When I bought my first house, the interest rate on my house was 19% on my mortgage.
It's like buying it on your credit card.
Yeah, but back then that's what a mortgage went for. And and nowadays, if you told someone, yeah, you might have to pay 8% on your mortgage, people will look at you cross-eyed. What are you kidding me? So people have been spoiled. People have their expectations set at a certain level, and so I think real estate could be in for a real rough ride coming forward. And we know about all the associated industries that go along with real estate. Furniture, home repair. There's so many things connected to the real estate market. The two major industries that I think really drive the economies are the energy market and the real estate market, and they're both under severe pressure. That's why I think we are heading for hyperinflation. I still think we're going to see it by the end of the summer, if not certainly by Halloween. I think we're going to see. I'm trying to see. You're down there. Everything's flipped. Yeah, but Halloween here is fall. So okay. By Halloween, I think we could see. I think we could see not quite Venezuela type inflation, but given a good run for its money, so to speak, is a bad.
Well, remember in Turkey, inflation went from being, I think it was 13%, and over a period of 4 months, it pumped up to 70%, which is where it's at today. And it only took, what are we in June now? So it's been 6 months now, but it really started to bite and get momentum in about November of last year. So really, you're sort of talking 6 or 7 months time. And if you project us 6 or 7 months time into the future, you guys are sitting there at 8 or 9% in the US, the official rate, but we all know that it's probably around 15 or 20%, maybe even more. So that might start to bite really hard in the next couple of months. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully the economy.
So I think it is going to happen. I don't think it's. I think it's unavoidable. And a lot of these are policy issues. A lot of these issues can be fixed with the proper policy issues. Ideology is getting in the way of a lot of fixes for the American people here, and that's really unfortunate, really sad. But it is coming. I don't think these fixes are going to come soon enough to avoid that really ugly crash that's coming our way. And now, having said all this, having been little rays of sunshine for all the viewers out there, let's start giving people some ideas. So why don't you give us an idea or two that people should be doing right now?
Well, in times of inflation, what you've got to do is you got to ask your mortgage is still 500 grand. So just use a round number. You owe 500 grand on your house. When inflation goes up, that $500,000 is now potentially like $5 million, but you still owe the bank $500,000. So what is it that you can acquire today? That might be toilet paper that is really valuable. You buy a roll of toilet paper for $5 today, but supply chain issues cause all sorts of problems. And now somebody's willing to pay, all jokes aside, $100 for those 12 rolls of toilet paper that you've got. You've got like a year's supply in your garage there. You might be able to pay your mortgage off with the toilet paper sitting in the garage. And it sounds funny and it sounds ridiculous, but that's how people in the 1920s, when it happened in Germany, like the hyperinflation, that's how they got rich. They had things that were available to them. People would trade pianos. I don't need that piano. The piano is not doing anything there. They'd come in there and buy that piano, which would normally be worth thousands of dollars in their society, and they'd pick it up for a bag of potatoes because they were farmers. And the people that did the best in those times are the ones that had food. I don't think that's going to really happen so badly here. It might happen in our societies, but certainly not here in Australia. It might happen there in the States. I don't really know. I don't know enough about you guys to say that or not. But I think the just-in-time delivery system that we have, that same concept overlays to the banking system. It's the just-in-time. We just have enough toilet paper on the shelves to feed the people today. We just have enough stuff on the shelves in the supermarket to feed the people today. And then we have a giant rush, like it's Christmas and everyone's buying everything off on the shelves. And tomorrow we only are able to fill up half of it. Then that tomorrow people take it all away again. It's gone again. What can you acquire today that will be valuable in times of hyperinflation? One thing that's really valuable in that sense is gold. It's also silver, because the price of those things remain stable across those. And it's not as hard to offload those things as what you think. I might have those gold coins, I might have that stuff. Go down to your local jeweler and they'll trade it for you as well. So you can trade it in more places than you actually realize. And you can exchange that for fiat money. If the gold price pumps all the way up to $10,000 and you've bought gold today for $2,000 an ounce or whatever it's at today, $1,800 an ounce today, and you've got, lots of that, that might be a really spectacular opportunity for you to actually pay off some debt that you've got and to actually put food on the table. So I always sort of look to the worst, plan for the worst and expect the best. And what can you do today and acquire today that will be valuable in times of inflation? I bought another spear gun the other day, go out spear fishing, go out, catch 4 or 5 fish. I'm telling you, I think probably in times of inflation, people are hungry. I go out fishing like that and come home with food, all jokes aside, you want to fish? Yeah, no worries, man. $50 done, puts a quarter of a tank of gas in my car for the week, because petrol was going to cost me $200 to fill up my car because that's just what it's going to cost because of inflation.
No, that's excellent. Having a good skill set. That's not a bad a recommendation. Learn something that's tradable, something that's useful.
You're quite right. It goes to the heart of food, water, shelter, and then emotional. You need to be okay emotionally when you've got those things, but then you need a village around you as well. Yeah. So one of the things that you can do to protect yourself in these uncertain inflationary times is to surround yourself with people that can help you and that you can help them, because you can't, it's like all of these wars that we're fighting, no one fights by themselves. It's impossible. The Ukrainians would have been rolled up long ago if we didn't support them, long ago. And the Taiwanese are going to get rolled up straight away if we don't support them. And likewise with the Israelis. So you've got to take the same concept to yourself as well. Who are your allies? Who can you rely on? Who can you call on? And they need to be physical in your world. Say hello to your neighbors. I think that's something that's really understated in these difficult times. I live in an apartment now, the place we live in now, directly across the way. And every now and then hi, how are you? But I notice they never say hello to me. So I often think, in times of crisis, if something was wrong, if that guy needed help or she needed help or something was wrong, I'd like to think she could come over and go, hey Rob, can you come and help me do something? I need help. Yes. Say hi to your neighbors and get to know the people that are around you, because in times of of hardship, they're the people that are closest to you and may be able to help you. And who knows, you might make a new friend in the process.
Yep. Good advice. I like all that stuff. And I'll just add that I think you try to find sources of passive recurring income if you can. Start doing it now if you can. Anything you can do now. It's true that whatever income you get might be diminished by inflation, but listen, everything's going to be diminished anyway. You got to find a way to offset that. Even if you find something that just generates, $10 a day, that's if it comes in, if you don't have to work for it, that's an extra $300 a month. That's a cell phone bill, or that's some kind of a bill that'll. But if you can set a modest objective of generating, $200 a day in passive income, that's not a tall order, actually. Look for a few ways but try to find things that will last, if possible. The things that once, it might involve a little bit of work up front getting it up and running, but once it's going, if it's truly passive recurring income. And do as many of those as you can. And once one is set, once one is on its way, and start another one, and do that as many times as you can, because eventually some of them might fall off the list. So just find ways of generating passive recurring income. You go to
maybe that's a good strategy there, mate. I just want to jump in there. Sorry to interrupt you, but because before I lose that thought, I think one of the things I've experienced a couple of crises in my life. I remember the .com crash back in the day, 2002 is when I first kicked off my business. I do remember 2008, but it didn't really affect us that badly here in Australia because we didn't suffer from subprime mortgage type stuff here in Australia. There was a bit of that, but it's nothing like what you guys experienced in the States. So I've seen the ups and downs of economy. And as a guy that's worked in the digital space the entire time, and in the physical world as well, by the way, but I've always had something going on in a digital space. I always see that while there's complete and total chaos going on outside in the outside world, that's not always true online. Sometimes online businesses are absolutely booming. And I just want to give people a couple of ideas, that some things that they might be able to do for themselves to start thinking about generating passive recurring income. So really dead simple things that you can do. Find some Amazon products that you can FBA. Find some eBay products you can FBA. There's ways that you can, I promise you, if you just go to YouTube right now and you look at Amazon arbitrage, they'll show you how to go down to Walmart or Target, and they'll show you how to buy something on the shelf there at a retail price that you can retail plus back on Amazon or back on eBay or some other online store, your own store, run ads to it. So there's dead simple ways that you can start doing those things for yourself. Another example would be the online education space is like worth $10 billion a year, something like that. It's massive, right? And if you've got some sort of intellectual property that you can turn into a course, and you've got the right people around you to help you to do all of those things, and I've been doing a bit of that recently, a little bit of an unashamed plug in there. But if you've got the right people around to help you to do those things, that can be an extremely valuable thing as well. And let me give you an example of how valuable that online course space is. You might have heard of a business before called Masterclass. So they have all celebrities. They have Mariah Carey coming in teaching you singing or something like that, or they have Gordon Ramsay teaching you how to make scrambled eggs in the morning or something similar to that. So they use the celebrity pool to pull their IP into these masterclasses. Really beautifully produced stuff, high quality. There's 84 masterclasses on their website, and that business is worth $880 million in turnover. So to give you some idea of the online course space, and that is just one business, right? And there's literally thousands of places that you can go to create a course. You might go to something like Udemy, and you might want to learn how to read charts or do stock analysis or something like that. There'll be 30 or 40 courses sitting there in Udemy for it. And you're like, yeah, but I'm only making $15 a time or something like that. But if you look closely, you will see that that person has sold 40,000 courses. And you take your intellectual property, you arrange that, you turn it into something, and then you upload it to a place where people are looking for that. That's a form of recurring income. So there's some really simple ways to do this. It's not always about investing. It's not always about you having to upfront money or to do something like that. You can do this with no money down. You can do this just with what's inside of your brain box. If you've got the right attitude and you're determined enough and you surround yourself with the right people as well. I think that that's the key to it.
You know, and I do want to ask you to elaborate a little bit on that, because you are a professional consultant. You've had many years in consulting with small business owners about how to grow their businesses, particularly related to the digital space, how to properly set up a website, how to properly promote the website, and how to avoid the common mistakes. Can you talk a little bit more about what you do to help people? Because I know that there are people going to be watching this who do have businesses that are online and they have websites, and maybe they're wondering why it's not producing anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, most of what I do is help people make more sales from their website and from their advertising campaigns. And it doesn't really matter where your ads come from, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, Google, Snapchat, TikTok, or whatever. It doesn't really matter where the ads come from. The same concepts apply universally across websites. And, you know, typically over the years, people would come to me and say, hey, Rob, can you help me with my ad campaign? And the next question that I ask, the conversation goes the same way, just kind of different iterations of questions, but it's the same thing. So what's wrong with your current ad campaign? Oh, it's not converting. Why isn't it converting? I don't know, because the guy running it's a dickhead. And they're complaining about the people, and they're complaining about it not working for them. So there's one of two reasons why your ad campaigns won't work and why your websites won't convert. The first one is that your targeting in your advertising is not right. So you're just targeting the wrong people. You can't, you know, if you're selling dog collars, you can't put it in front of people that are interested in cats and like cats on Facebook. It's just not going to work. It's just going to be white noise to those people. So your targeting is either off, or your offer sucks and your targeting doesn't marry up to what your offer has got. But what I like to say at that point is I like to say that people are looking for love in all the wrong places, because they like to blame the targeting, they like to blame the website, but they never take responsibility themselves. And when you're pointing at something, you've got those 4 fingers pointing back at you, or there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. It's you that's not right. So what happens is people don't actually understand what the quantifiable end result of their product is. They just don't put it on their websites or in their material to help people to understand exactly what I'm going to get and how I feel when I buy your product or your service. And they haven't done the work that's required to give to the media buyer so they have a deep understanding of what it is that they're doing. So what are the hooks that somebody has for their ad campaigns? How do they transition from the ad to your landing page into the shopping cart, into the upsells, the cross sells, and then how do you retain them and bring them all the way back through the cycle with a retargeting ad and do it all again? So a lot of my life and my world is spent talking about these higher level concepts, but then also helping people to execute on these concepts and to make sure that they arrange their systems. And inevitably, we get results for people. We get results because you kind of move everything out of the way and you come back to square one, which is you as the business owner and as the individual. And if you don't have your mindset dialed in properly, you don't have your message aligned to your mission, your vision, and your values, if that's not all aligned and that's not permeating from every part of your business and your brand, then it's just not going to convert. You might get it to convert, but it won't be converting at the rate that you want it to. Because every single person that's ever come to me over 20 odd years of doing this has said, I want to make more sales. Every single person. Whenever you say, why do you want to do that? I want to make more sales. Okay, cool. Are you going to take responsibility for that? Yeah, I'm taking responsibility for that. Well, no, you're not, because you're not making more sales and you're not where you want to be. So it's a funny paradox that happens there, right? Like it's a bit of a circular thing that happens because people are looking for external solutions, but the solutions all lie within yourself. And I help people to bring that out. There's a bit of coaching, there's a bit of personal development, there's a bit of other stuff that's going on there as well. It's kind of fun. I really like it because you get to engage with people at a really deep and intimate level, and you get past all of the fluff of getting to know somebody and you go straight to the heart of what really drives them. And I love that aspect of working closely with people like that.
And I will have Rob's contact information in the description below. So if you have a business with any kind of sales, digital sales that you need to improve, he's your guy, man. You should reach out to him and have a conversation. And I know that I first met you, not about this, but you and I met a little over a year ago now. And
Yeah.
I feel like you're one of my top 3 friends in the world now.
Thanks.
I don't tell you. I mean, I had to put my mom in there somewhere, so I couldn't give you absolute. I couldn't give you absolute top billing. Okay. So there are a lot of things that I have on my paper here, but I want to respect your time, Rob. So we'll wrap it up here, so you can get on with your day, and it leaves us more to talk about, next time around. But I do want to sneak in one final.
Bitcoin's approaching 20,000. We just had a giant sell-off yesterday. I think we might be on the way to 12,000. If you look at the lowest low, and that could be absolutely devastating for a lot of people because Bitcoin pulls everything down, of course, but it's also a buying opportunity. By now, you should have cleared out your positions. By now, you should be in short positions. By now, you should be okay. So if you haven't done those things and you're just riding this elevator on the way down, watching your account get smaller and smaller, you just need to get off those positions. I know I'm telling you to lock in the loss, but stop the bleeding. And what's going to happen in 6 months' time and where that's going to be, who really knows? Just keep an eye on the charts, keep an eye on the daily charts, and then keep an eye on day, week, and month. So that way you're not looking at it on a minute by minute scenario. So I always like to look at the monthly chart, take that macro view, and then just zoom in. Okay, so what's happening daily? Like if I look at the monthly chart, where is it telling me it's going to go next? But then I look at the daily, then I can see it a little bit closer as well. So I think that's the key. Just draw some support and resistance lines on the chart. Look at the previous lows where they were. Are we going anywhere near that? Does it look like that?
And I agree with all of that. And the subscribers to our channels are not surprised with anything going on in this market. And our subscribers were able to either keep the losses very small by doing what we did, and actually make money in the market there are some shorting techniques and hedging techniques to take advantage of that. And but a lot of people are just learning about this stuff. And a lot of people, they've had Bitcoin for 2 years because someone told them to buy it and they fell in love with it, and they can't bring themselves to sell it, and they're old. So my advice to people is, first of all, you got to put yourself in the proper mindset. Start thinking about the markets like a trader, not an investor. What I mean by that is the difference between a trader and investor is not one of time frame. It's one of philosophy. Okay, an investor is willing to ride a position down to zero because he has faith in whatever it is he's in. He fell in love with it. A trader has no faith. A trader is.
Do you think it'll bounce back? Do you have faith that we'll be back at 50 grand with Bitcoin if we just picked on that for a minute by the end of the year?
But no, I don't. No. And the reason why is you got to remember the stock market is made up of human beings, and human beings are emotional creatures. So the market's never going to be rational. That's why these patterns always work, is because they are just visual representations of human emotion, and human emotion will never change. If you could go back to ancient Egypt and chart the price of wheat, the chart would mean the exact same thing, because human emotion never changes. And what we saw in the market, that's why when I did my video a couple of months ago showing that when the market takes out this level, and when Bitcoin takes out this level, you're going to see a cascading effect downward. There's a reason why I said that, and I said it unabashedly. I didn't qualify my statement, and sure enough, it happened. Now, the only if is if it took out that support line, which in both those cases it did, and we're seeing what's happening. Because that chart, I know what the emotional effect is when that support level was taken out, and we're seeing what was happening. Now, when you get that kind of a significant long-term support level taken out, it's the equivalent of getting hit in the face by a professional prize fighter. Okay, you're not gonna spring off the mat. Okay, you might make a few noble attempts to get off the mat, okay, but you're going back down again. It's going to take a while to recover. So when the market takes that kind of a severe technical beating in such a short period of time, but it didn't happen in a short period, it was building up for a long period of time. That's why I said when that level is taken up, that's when you're going to see it. And I made that prediction about 5 weeks before it actually happened. Okay, so it took a while for it to happen. It takes a while to convince the market to go through that tipping point. The market doesn't want to go down. The market is naturally bullish. And there's also the plunge protection team out there you always have to worry about. That's a different topic. But no, I think the market's going to have to it's going to have to go down more from here. It's going to have a capitulation. And that is usually, and what we had last week might have been the capitulation, but it doesn't really feel like capitulation yet. I think there's still a lot of true believers out there. What we have to do is we have to put a knife through that last true believer, and that's when it has a chance of finding the bottom. And so when we get that final flush out, then we got to go through a period of recovery. People have to recover. So we're going to have to go through a sideways phase for probably quite a while, and it's going to be sloppy. That sideways channel is not going to be real straight. It's going to be a lot of this and this. It's going to be a lot of garbage. There's going to be a lot of noise signifying nothing, and that's going to go for a long period of time. But you need that nice little base to build before you can get a substantial. It's like building a foundation to a house, right? In order to get a nice solid move upward, you have to have a nice solid foundation. And it takes time to put in that granite foundation for the next move up. No, I think we have further room to the downside to go. Then we got a lot of sideways movement. And then maybe this time next year, maybe we can start another upward move.
That sounds to me like what you're kind of forecasting and saying is that the crypto winter is going to be longer than the Minnesota winter.
Yeah. And again, and I was predicting the crypto winter before it was popular to call it a crypto winter. I was calling it the crypto winter before everyone else was. So
what I think's really funny and ironic about it all is like you're kind of using everything that you know over a lifetime of doing this, and you're using a chart, right? And because the chart is the reflection of what people are thinking. But if you cast your mind back 6 months ago, even maybe a little bit longer, like 7 or 8 months ago, sort of September, October, November, December last year, and all of the crypto gurus on YouTube, Ralph Hall and all those guys all saying, oh, we're going to hit $100,000. We're going to be here, we're going to be there. It's rallying this way. All of this stuff's going to happen. I remember my buddy Jamie came over early in the new year and he said, what do you think's happened, Rob? What do you think's happened that where's the rally, man? I thought like Ethereum's going to be at 12 grand, and sure, it rallied a bit, but it didn't rally the way that we thought it would. And I said to him, why are you listening to those people? All they're doing is sharing their opinion. And whenever they show you a chart, they're showing you like a sliver of the entirety of the entire market. But how can they know what's going on? Why are you like hanging on every word that they're saying? You've got to learn to actually read the charts for yourself and interpret what you think is going to happen. And that'll stop all of the negative effects of, oh my God, Bitcoin was going to be at $100,000 and now it's down at 20,000 and it's come off its high of 50,000 or whatever it was. So that's a self-defense mechanism that you've got to learn to build for yourself. And I think that that's something that's understated and never really spoken about, because you're looking for love in all the wrong places again. You're looking for all these external validators to tell you that everything's going to be okay, but you're not willing to do the work yourself to figure out if it actually is okay or not.
Well, all those people who are making those lofty predictions about all those cryptocurrencies, none of them ever refer to the charts. They're they're projecting, well, this many consumers are going to adopt it, and they're making assumptions. They're making assumptions about the adoption rate of the underlying technology. And if just 1% more of the world population adopts it, it's going to mean blah, blah, blah. And they were making assumptions but with charts, the charts just tell you the true story. It's pure. Now, one of the things about Bitcoin that is better than all the other ones is that there's 21 million Bitcoin. That's all there ever was. That's all there's ever going to be. With a lot of these coins, you can't get a handle on how many there are going to be at any given point in time, because they're always doing these burnings or they're adding it. And
there's the problem, right? Like, remember the Terra thing that happened, Terra and Luna. I'm burning and I'm minting and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. But if you actually look at the chart, you can see once it busts through that particular thing, the whole thing is going to come undone. And even USDT lost its peg to the dollar as well for a little while there. Imagine if that had come undone the same way, that would have been. But I guess it's slightly different because it's backed by something and there's money in the bank. And USDC, nothing happened there because 99.7% of it sits in a bank account. Like it's like a bank, like a version of a crypto bank. That's the difference. But I think this minting and burning, all this BS that's going on there is not you're comparing apples and bloody watermelons to Bitcoin and Terra. And Terra is supposed to be like this stable coin to solve the problems of the fiat system with minting and burning and all this sort of stuff. And the concept of it definitely does. And the concept of it is a good idea, but you're still just dealing with people, to your point. You're dealing with emotion.
Well, see, that's part of the problem, isn't it, in the crypto space, is the word cryptocurrency is a very wide, it's a very loose terminology. Okay, yeah. It's like talking about the tech space or the medical space. Okay, well, which medical? There are a lot of not all cryptos are created equally, right? Now, I will say this though. One way to look at this, and it's actually very exciting. If you look at it, if you take the same prism and you just turn it a little bit, if you look at it a certain way, this can be very exciting. Okay.
Yeah.
Coming out of this disaster that we're going, this crypto disaster that underway, the ones that survive all this, the ones that are left standing, they're going to, if it's solid, okay, they're going to show themselves. They're, in the midst of all the rubble, in the midst of all the ashes, you're going to see, hey, there's someone standing over there. Oh, hey, there's someone standing over there. Those are the guys that you'll be able to, hitch your wagon to. And maybe make a lot of money. So a lot of these cryptos, a lot of these shit coins are going to be gone. They will be extinct. They won't be around anymore. But you find the ones that are around, you're going to have a nice little selection, nice little starting point, to choose from. And you can make a lot of money. So be a little bit patient. Start, go out and cut some more grass on the weekends and save that money for when that opportunity comes along, because there's going to come a time to make a lot of money in these guys real fast. And Rob and I will be here to throw ideas at you guys.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good.
Okay, Rob. Thanks for your time, man. I know it's I can't believe you're wearing an actual long sleeve shirt. It must be brutal living there on the seashore.
Be brutal at 15 degrees Celsius. It's freezing. Dying. I don't know how you live in the snow like that in Minnesota. That's ridiculous to me.
All right, guys. So Ed Anderson and Rob Bruss saying goodbye.
Yeah.
I saw some beautiful ladies walking around the background there, so make sure you say hello to me. Hello. That's Suze. Hi, Suze. Yeah. Well, Rob's a lucky man. You should tell them that every morning with the egg. You should tell them every morning you should be making me eggs.
You're looking very happy today.
Oh, hey! Anytime I get a chance to talk to Rob, I'm a happy man. So I add like 4 months to my life every time I get a chance to talk to Rob, because I'm in good spirits. Yeah.
See? Yeah. You're telling me to be quiet all the time.
These videos, normal YouTube videos on loud, and he forgets I'm in the room. So put your earphones in.
Yeah, one of the best investments. One of the best investments in keeping a marriage happy, right, is earphones.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Copy that.